Welcome to Candlewick Library. I'm Cheryl, and today I'm doing the Different Houses tag. This tag was created quite a while ago by a few different people: Abigail's Book Corner, Ciara Foster, Brews and Reviews, Adventuring Foodie, and Current Chapter. And what this does is it has a few different prompts for each of the 4 Hogwarts houses. The first house is Hufflepuff, and the first prompt is loyalty. Hufflepuffs are known for their undying loyalty. Name an insta-buy author. I've talked about this in a different video before. There are a few people that I buy pretty much everything that they come out with, but I don't know if it will be that way forever. And some of them I don't even have everything that they have written, but at this point I'm buying their new things that they come out with. And one of them is Jennifer Nielsen. We don't have all of her books, but I think I have all of her historical fiction now that she has out at this point. And so almost every year she comes out with a historical fiction, YA middle grade-ish historical fiction, and I think hers are the best for that age group. I love them. So she is definitely an auto-buy author unless something changes. Number 2, animals or magical creatures. Hufflepuffs tend to have a love for animals. So a book or series with animals or magical creatures on them. Another author that I have bought, I think everything he has. I think that he only has one picture book out that I don't own. But other than that, I have all of his novels, I think. And that's Brandon Mull. And so his Fablehaven series has a lot of magical creatures. You can see right on this cover, fairies. There's also unicorns and different things like that in his books. The Fablehaven series is a brother and a sister who go to stay with their grandparents and find out that their grandparents are caretakers of this sanctuary for magical creatures. I believe there's 5 books in the series, and then there's a sequel series called Dragon Watch, and I've loved all of them. Number 3, Trustworthy, a series in which none of the books have disappointed you. And I have a few for this as well, but the first one I thought of is the Sinclair Mysteries. The first book is Clockwork Sparrow, and then there is The Jeweled Moth, The Painted Dragon, and The Midnight Peacock. These are about a group of kids who work at a department store and solve mysteries, and I don't hear people ever talk about this series. And I read it, I don't even remember how I found out about them, but I've read the whole series. My oldest daughter has just read the first one so far, but these are so fun. They're kind of Victorian era, I believe, clean YA-ish mystery. Number 4, Caring. And so a book or series whose main character holds a special place in your heart. This one, I had to go with one that I've talked about a lot, and of course that's Anne of Green Gables, so Anne Shirley. She's been one of my favorites since I was a little girl. Anne of Green Gables has shaped a lot of my personality. Number 5, Kindness, a book or series that you love despite its flaws and imperfections. For this one, I'm going with Twilight. I know it is popular nowadays, especially, to hate on this book series, but I think these are just fun. They're just fun to read. Not for everybody, I get that, but I enjoyed them. I really liked them when they first came out, and I still enjoy them. I know they're imperfect and definitely have their flaws, but I think it's a really fun series. And number 6, Patience, a book you struggled to get through but stuck it out until the end. There were a few that I thought of for this as well, some that I've answered a similar question in other tags, but this time I thought of Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis. This is a retelling of the myth of Cupid and Psyche. I think that's how you say it, and it was really interesting. But it definitely took me a while to get used to it and get into it. And I didn't really know this myth very well when I read this. And so I had to kind of stop and go and look it up and familiarize myself with it a little bit more so that I would understand his retelling of it. I like that on the cover page it says, "A myth retold. Love is too young to know what conscience is." I'm glad I read it, and I do plan on reading it again at some point. And I just love this cover with the stained glass look. The next house is Slytherin. So the first prompt for Slytherin is a snake or reptile in the book. And the first one I thought of was Ballad of Songbird and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. And this even has the snake on the cover and in the titles. I'm sure everybody's already familiar with this, but this goes back before the Hunger Games. It's a prequel telling the story of President Snow. I really liked it. Number 2, a water element set in the water or near water. And the first book I thought of was Nim's Island. This is by Wendy Orr. This is a little girl and her father who are stranded on this island. This describes her as a modern-day Robinson Crusoe. Number 3, leadership, a character with strong leadership skills. I'm going to stick with the Hunger Games on this one and say Katniss Everdeen. Number 4, ambition, a book that lived up to the hype. And for that, I'm going to say A Place to Hang the Moon by Kate Albus. I actually read this before I heard very much hype about it, but since then I've heard a lot of people talk about it, and I think this book lives up to it. This is some children who leave London to go live out in the country during World War II, and they have just been orphaned. So they are also looking for a family to hopefully adopt them after the war. And I found this book to be so sweet and heartwarming, and there are some nods to Narnia in this. Number 5, resourcefulness, creative or unique way to accomplish a task or get out of a situation. I sat and thought about that for a long time, kind of trying to figure out what exactly it meant or what it could mean in a book. But then I did think of The Scarlet Pimpernel by Baroness Orsi. I read this book for the first time this year, and I really loved it. And this is during the French Revolution, and the Scarlet Pimpernel is helping to save people out of France. There are a lot of really clever ways that he is escaping France with the people he is saving. Number 6, a book with house colors of green and silver. The first one I noticed on my shelf that had these colors was Matched by Ali Condi, with the silver kind of there and in the little orb, and then the green, of course. This series is about kind of a dystopian society where people are matched to the person they're going to marry. And I loved this series when I first read it, when it first came out. I haven't read it in so long, so I don't know if I would still enjoy it or not. But I do want to actually reread these sometime soon. And number 7, A Bad Guy, a book where you feel for the bad guy. And this one, I immediately thought of this answer, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. In this, of course, we get the story of Heathcliff and Catherine. And they are both, they're not heroes. And to me, this actually does not feel like a romance story. I don't find it romantic, but I remember the first time I read this, I felt so bad for Heathcliff because I felt like he turned out to be this kind of not nice guy, and he's kind of the anti-hero or villain of the story. But I feel like he wouldn't have got there had he not been treated the way he was. So I felt bad for him because I felt like he would have had some potential to be different than he was if Catherine wasn't the way she was, and if he hadn't been treated the way he was by other people. The next house is Ravenclaw. Number 1, you need a riddle to open the door at the top of the Ravenclaw Tower. A book with riddles. And so I thought of this book. This is the Mysterious Benedict Society, Mr. Benedict's book of perplexing puzzles, elusive enigmas, and curious conundrums. And this is not part of the actual series. This is a book with different riddles and things to figure out. And I really love the Mysterious Benedict Society books. I think it's a great series. I haven't gone through and done all of this yet. I think I got it so that my daughter could, but I think she did and just didn't write in it, I think. But one of these days I'll have to go through this and just kind of check out the different riddles. Number 2, a book with a blue and bronze cover. Well, this one has blue and bronze on the title part. This is Rose in Bloom by Louisa May Alcott. This is the sequel to 8 Cousins. And everybody talks about Little Women. Sometimes you hear people talking about other books. I love 8 Cousins. I think it's a great book, and Rose in Bloom is the sequel to that. And so I enjoyed this one a lot too. Not quite as much as 8 Cousins, but I still liked it a lot. So if you liked Little Women, you should check those ones out as well. Number 3, Intelligence, a cleverly written book. I picked one book to highlight all of the books by this author, and then there were none by Agatha Christie. I think Agatha Christie is one of the most clever writers out there. All of her books are so well done. I hardly ever guess right who done it. This was the very first one I ever read by her, and I've loved her ever since. And that was in 8th grade. It was a long time ago. Number 4, Wit, a funny book. And I have to pick The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. This is a play, but this book has a collection of his plays. And I think he's always funny, but Importance of Being Earnest is my favorite play, and I just think it's so funny. Number 5, Wisdom, a book you wish your younger self would have read. That has to be the Narnia series. I did not read these until I was an adult, and I would have absolutely loved them. I mean, I do love them now, but I would have really loved them as a kid, and since they were out already, I'm sad that I didn't read them when I was a child. Number 6, Originality, an original start to a series. When the Day Comes by Gabriel Meyer. There are other time travel books out there, but I think the idea of someone living in 2 different time periods and then having to choose which one they're going to stay in is so creative. that was what drew me to this book. It wasn't because of just the hype. It was because the idea intrigued me. And I think she did it really well. And now on to Gryffindor. Number 1, Nearly Headless Nick. A book with a disappointing death. I'll say Little Women. So I'll use another Louisa May Alcott book here. I'm not going to say who the death is for anybody who hasn't read it yet, but I was definitely sad and disappointed by the death. Number 2, Common Room, your favorite cozy place to read. This chair right here in my library is my favorite place to read. Number 3, Bravery or Courage, a book outside of your comfort zone. So I'm going to say Wordsworth and Coleridge's Lyrical Ballads. This is a beautiful book of poetry from the two of them. Wordsworth is one of the poets I really like, but I don't read poetry very much. In fact, books in verse is one of my anti-buzzwords. And I do like poetry more than a book in verse, I guess I should say. But anything that is poetry or in verse, it's very hit or miss. So that's the most out of my comfort zone, probably, of something that I actually would read, but don't very often. Number 3, Adventurous, took you on a grand adventure. What other book could I use for this besides Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne? I read this out loud to my daughters. We all loved it. And I immediately was smitten with this book. I need to reread it again. I love it so much. And they do come through Utah, which is kind of fun. Determination, a book you are determined to read. I bought The Brothers Karamazov, and I fully intended to read that this year, but I don't think I'm going to get to it this year. So I'm hoping to next year. It is very intimidating. It is very big, but I do want to read it. Red and gold on the cover. The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. This has a lot of red and some gold on the cover. This is her story of how they hid Jewish people in World War II, and then they ended up going to the concentration camps themselves. This is such a heartbreaking book. It's such a good book. And then the last one is Element of Fire, a book that makes you feel warm. So I'm guessing by that something that makes me feel warm and cozy, or that I have warm feelings toward because I love it so much. So I chose The Blue Castle by Ellen Montgomery. This is probably my second favorite book by her besides, the Anne of Green Gables series, count all of that. And then this is my second favorite. And that is all the prompts. I would love, again, to tag my Back to Hogwarts Readathon co-host, but I've already tagged you guys in one video, so don't feel like you need to do both of them or either of them. I just thought it would be fun every time I do a Harry Potter tag this month to tag you guys, and you can pick and choose. And anyone who is participating in the readathon or watching this video, if you would like to do this, I would love to see your videos.